I think one of my favorite things is to have someone come in who's from a different culture or grew up in a different country and see something and immediately transported back to their childhood. Like my grandfather had that tree. We ate that fruit growing up. I haven't seen it in 40, 50 years. Everybody was so happy. There were Puerto Rican flags everywhere, and there was music, and there was so much resiliency. He tells people that I'm a fancy gardener. I just that's his dad's a fancy gardener. I'm like, we've seen kids wrap presents. They use leaves to wrap little, pine cones or things. The imagination is just incredible, and you really see that come out in our nature play area.
Leave the phone in the car and go through the garden like that would be just, an exercise and something that is good for my soul.
I said, stormwater's not sexy. Well, we can make them sexy. A lot of people move into a community because they've got a waterfront view around a lake. Well, if it's just turf down to the edge, that's not necessarily very attractive.
So hey everyone, and welcome back to the Spotlight on Good People, where we shine a light on the humans that are making the world more compassionate, more kind, and more connected. Today's guest is a true force of nature, quite literally. Chad Washburn is the Vice President of Conservation at Naples Botanical Garden. He's a plant geek, a father, a global leader in conservation strategy, and someone who spent nearly 2 decades protecting the fragile flora of South Florida and the Caribbean. He's been at the forefront of stormwater innovation, beach dune restoration, urban forestry, seed banking, and global botanical collaboration, all in the name of nature-based solutions. His handle on X says it best, at Why Plants Matter. And after today, you'll understand exactly why. Yeah. So welcome, Chad. Thanks.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool. So I got to ask, what got you into the world and your fascination with plants?
Some of those things I think growing up, I grew up on a farm, and we were all of my friends lived in town, and they all got to play together, and I don't think I got that as much. So we spent most of our time outside, and it was one of those things that just I think developed and grew over time. And I think when I got to college, I realized hey, I really, really like this. I really enjoy this. I had a job in college, and I got a job in the greenhouse. And I went to school in a small southern Indiana town. And in the middle of winter, all of my friends, it was cold outside. I could go in the greenhouse. I was in my shorts and T-shirt. I was gardening. Loved it. I was like, I think there was a little bit of an idea then that was something I was passionate about and wanted to go into. But what kind of jobs are there in plants? I thought, at the time, I wanted to be a doctor. And then over time, that passion just kind of grew and grew, and opportunities opened up. And next thing I know, this is what I do for a living. So it's always been there, I think. But I think it took the experiences that I've had throughout my life to realize that that was the thing I was most passionate about.
What was school like for you? Were you a good student? Were you?
I was a good student in the sciences. I was a good student in biology. Really loved that. Was really passionate about that. In college, I went to a small liberal arts school in southern Indiana. And it was great because I could study philosophy, I could study English, I could study all of these different things. But I being a small school, you could kind of focus everything around what you were passionate about. And it kind of went back to the environment for me. Taking, I did a lot of environmental literature. I did philosophies around human relationships to nature. And then when I graduated, that kind of, was tied all that together for me. I felt like I came out well-rounded, not just plants, but all the other aspects around plants and how they connected with people and their importance to our lives, and what they can really provide to our communities.
I never even knew that existed, that connection and relationship between the two, like humans and plants, and that I think maybe the field was evolving, because I look at FGCU now, and they have a lot of many. I don't know all the programs they have, but I imagine they didn't have as much to offer. They have way more to offer now than they did when you were back in your day, where it was sort of seemed emerging, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I think that and as you drive around Naples, it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. But one of the things that makes it beautiful is that tropical landscape, that lush tropical landscape that we have. And I think that you forget that. And I think I remind myself that we don't always see the plants, but they make up a big part of our community. They give South Florida the feel that it's this tropical paradise.
Yeah, so, and it is paradise. Yeah. It is. I mean, I love when I'm from Philadelphia, but been here a long time, and I love when family comes down and they look at our medians and they go, "Oh my gosh, that median is beautiful. It's gorgeous. Yeah, well manicured and perfect and pretty, and just the green. I mean, it is paradise. I mean, it's hard to go on vacation from here because it's such Pleasantville. It's so
I think we forget that as we drive around. It's easy to forget. You're going somewhere and you're just like, oh no, this is paradise. Slow down and just enjoy this. We really do. And we're going into summer now, and that's when it is hot, but that's when we get our time and things slow down a little bit and we get our chance to take that deep breath and enjoy Naples, enjoy Southwest.
It's not any hotter than anywhere. I mean, people talk about how terrible it is, but it's great. It's okay. We get our roads back a little, we get our restaurants back.
Yeah, the restaurants, absolutely.
You get to enjoy. Yeah. How did you get to Naples? What brought you here? What happened in this journey?
Yeah, so at the time I was working at a company in Indiana and we were restoring prairies, and I liked the job.
What is that?
So it was like going into a wetland or a prairie that has maybe got invasive species or it's degraded. So it's like a grassland with wildflowers. Okay. It's a native ecosystem in the Midwest. So that was in northern Indiana. We had a lot of these open prairies. So we'd go into those areas and restore them. We'd plant the right native plants there. Sometimes they needed fire as part of their ecosystem to manage them. Yeah. Oh, wow. So I loved what I was doing, and I really got a great experience doing that. But at the time, I was engaged and got married, and we said, all right, whoever has the first job opportunity will move there. And looked around for jobs, and at the time wife decided that she got a job here at the Conservancy of Southwest Florida. So we moved down here, and I kind of came kicking and screaming. I was like, I wasn't sure I wanted to be here. I knew so much about the environment in the Midwest, and here we are, 20 years later, and I feel like this is home. This has become, I've got this connection to the environment, and I didn't know what I was going to do when I got here, and I worked a little bit at the Conservancy for a little while, but talking to some people, and they said, "Oh, we're starting a botanical garden here in Naples." I said, "Oh, I've done that before." So I had helped start the Belize Botanical Garden in Central America. And I said, "Oh, I've got experience doing that. And, I'd like to come out and check it out." And, again, next thing I know, 18, 19 years later, I'm still here doing the same thing. And we've, as a team, built a community botanical garden.
Yeah, from the ground up.
From the ground up.
Wow,
yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, there was, when we came to the site, there was nothing. It was just like a blank slate, which was a lot of fun to have that amount of freedom and to do that. It was tabula rasa, completely blank slate. And
it was what was the word?
Tabula rasa, blank slate. It was just an opportunity for us to go in and just do what we wanted and make it a beautiful tropical place for the people of the community.
Yeah, so. That's pretty cool because my business or our business is hair. Yeah. I know, ironically, hair, right? I'm not even a stylist, but to watch the artists and the stylists create, or Paul Arsenal we were talking about, has that blank canvas and creates from that, and you were able to create this. It is. I can't even put it into words for me when I went there for a wedding and saw it for the first time. I'd always heard about it, but had never been. And once I went, I was just blown away by what exists in this community, like how beautiful it is, and just felt like I was taken to another world. It was so special.
Thank you. That means a lot because that's what we wanted. That was what we wanted. When you come to the garden, that just like you're taken away to a different place. So,
I had no idea. Like they told us that's where the wedding was. How are you going to have a wedding in a garden? It didn't make sense. It didn't compute until I got there and saw it and had the experience of the place, because it left me really moved by nature, by the beauty of nature in our backyard, right here. So cool.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I think we get a lot of visitors to the garden from other countries, and we have a Caribbean garden that has plants from all over the Caribbean and Central America. We have a Brazilian garden. We have a Southeast Asian garden. I think one of my favorite things is to have someone come in who's from a different culture or from grew up in a different country, and come in and see something and immediately transported back to their childhood. Like, yeah, my grandfather had that tree. We ate that fruit growing up, and I haven't seen it in 40, 50 years. And it's just that, we don't realize those connections we have with nature until you slow down and appreciate that. And once you do, it's just that, like, oh yeah, that memory of, that just floods back. It's powerful.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Hey, everybody, stop the action. Stop the podcast. I've got some news for you. Since you've made it this far, you're going to get rewarded. We're giving away $100 gift certificates to Robert of Philadelphia salons. Yeah, that's right. We're giving away $100 gift certificates to Robert of Philadelphia salons, but it's only for the first 50 people who jump on this right now. So here's what to do. Follow us on Instagram. That's spotlight_GP, or TikTok, spotlight_GP. Then comment on the latest post with the words Spotlight on Good People. Real simple. Follow us and leave a comment. The first 50 that do that are going to get $100 to the salon. But heads up, this offer ends when June does. So you got to get it in by June. If we hit 50 before that, the game's over. So pause, follow, comment, and then get back to the good stuff. We've got more coming your way. Well, you're really well connected in the Caribbean and throughout. You have relationships, and tell me about that. Like, what because you a lot of your work that I see online involves collaboration with other communities like that. I think
one of the collaboration is so important. It's kind of the foundation of the garden's work. And one of the early opportunities that we had was hiring somebody whose job it is to bring people together. So on the conservation team, we have a person whose job it is to just bring people together, and find ways that we can work and meet each other's needs and listen to the community. But so in I don't know, it was around 2006, we hosted a conference in Belize at the Naples Botanical Garden that I had helped start years earlier. And we had all these gardens from around the Caribbean and Central America come in, and we tried to figure out how could we better work together. And we kind of started an informal group there. That was kind of the inception of this group working together. And as I left Belize, I said, that group is something that I feel like needs a hub, needs a connector, needs a voice to kind of, when you leave college, it's hard to keep connected to all your friends. And you always have that one friend who pulls everybody back in. And we needed that one friend that would bring everybody back together. And I thought, I've always, it'd be fun. I'd like to take on that role. I'd like to be that person who maybe quietly in the background brings people together and continues to those conversations, those bar stool conversations we have after a conference, or those kinds of things. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where things really happen. And we had a few years went on, and we kept those connections going. And then when we built the garden here, had a realization that we could formalize this, that we could be that position. We could do that. And that's what we've become. We're the secretariat, I guess is the formal term for the region, but we bring together about 200 gardens from around the Caribbean and Central America. And we do it to work towards, a kind of a strategy together, but it's as much that as it is bringing the people together. I mean, like, some of my best friends now are the people that are a part of that network, the people that we work with. And, there's not a single one who isn't passionate about something with the environment or with plants or with nature or with education. And it's become, it's become a central part of my life. I love it. Yeah.
And you also were involved with, we've had some of the worst hurricanes we've had in the history of my time here in the last 10 years. It's been kind of tough. Yeah. So not only did you guys go through it, but also you went down to help, or you went down to Puerto Rico, I think. We were talking about at Irma.
It was after Irma. Puerto Rico had been hit by Irma and Maria, and we'd been hit by Irma here in South Florida. And we cleaned up and, did our work here in the garden, and we're feeling exhausted. We're feeling tired. We're feeling, the whole community, just, it had a huge impact on our community,
Yes, it really did.
Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we had an opportunity to go down and help at an arboretum in Puerto Rico. So a couple of us from the garden loaded up some chainsaws, loaded up some equipment, and went down to hit all these rare trees in this arboretum. And they're just, some of them are tipped over, some of them are broken up. And we thought, oh, we can go down and help out. And I think, we showed up with this equipment, and, I don't think we had any idea what we were going to show up to. And we got there, and, there was so much devastation because they'd been hit by 2 storms.
Yeah.
But it was a game changer for me in terms of how everybody was so happy. There were Puerto Rican flags everywhere, and there was music, and there was so much just this resiliency, I think, in the community. And I just, okay, all right, I've got to take a step back, and we're feeling sorry for ourselves here, and what we went through as a community. Just realizing, a part of it was just the spirit of the people.
Yeah.
But realizing that they kind of saw it as, oh, we're all coming together. They were all, we're coming together to do this. So we did the cleanup there, and we learned a lot. We learned a lot about how to do it right, how to save rare trees. We collected a lot of seeds, collected a lot of plants and cuttings, and brought back, and we've since shared that back with them. But I think we learned a lot about ourselves on that process. It was kind of I think for us it was a good opportunity to kind of heal ourselves after the storm, and come at it with a different perspective. But now when there's storms, the Bahamas had Hurricane Dorian, and we had learned so much here. I was actually in no, I can't think of where we were, but we were with some of our colleagues from the Bahamas, and we were sharing like how to prepare for hurricanes. We knew what we had been through. They knew what their past experiences. So we're writing down a list as Dorian is bearing down on the Bahamas, and like, okay, what do we need? What supplies do we need to get to you the day after? What can we, what do you need? Because what you need on day 1 is different than what you need on day 5 and day 7. So now we've kind of become this group that we all help and support each other, and we've all learned how to be resilient in the face of those storms. And I think it makes it a little easier going into those.
Yeah, the human spirit was something that was pretty remarkable out of what we've been through in the community. But to see that being going outside of our bubble, even going to other places and contributing in that way, it's got to be really. I don't know what it's got to be like for you, but when you go to another region of the world, were you in Australia? Did you say?
I was in Australia for a conference.
But when you go to another region of the world, it's not the tropical or the area that we're from. What is that like for you to see other parts of what's happening?
I guess there's so many things that are similar because in Australia they face a lot of issues with wildfires, and everybody in the community knows everything about wildfires because that's impacted everybody. Like when we have hurricanes here, we are all watching the weather page. We know we all have our favorite weather person that we watch. It's not like it's ingrained in what we, our personalities. And there it was fire, and everybody knew about that. So we all face different issues everywhere, but they were using plants to figure out how, like we reduce the number of plants around our buildings, that can carry fire, and they were, managing ecosystems. The other part of it, going to these other countries, it's neat to see how they face the challenges those big challenges that they face, like wildfires or hurricanes or flooding or those big environmental challenges. But from a personal perspective, when I go to these places, I look around Naples and I know almost all of the plants, and I go to Australia and it's like being on Mars, because it's just like I don't know any of this stuff. It just feels very foreign, and in a way it's neat, but in a way it's like I look around and I just like I don't know any of this stuff. Like I drive around here and I can put names to everything, and don't know anything. So in a way it's a lot of fun. So
in a simplistic way, when I go back to, I haven't lived there for many years, but even when I go to Philadelphia in the summertime, I go in the winter, everything's gray and there is no foliage. It's different than what we live in. But when I go in the summer, the sense of the tree, the fragrances of the foliage and things are just, it's such a different world for me. Seeing, I have no idea what I'm looking at, but I just know things are a lot different than here when I'm there. But I can only imagine for you, from the world you live in, to see it's got to be like Mars when you go somewhere else.
Yeah, it feels so different. But I think that's part of that's the fun part of doing all that, is kind of getting outside your bubble, and and then hearing the stories that people tell when you go to these places. And I imagine you see that here. You get, I mean, you've been here in
40,
Naples
a long time,
long time. 40, how many years?
45 years.
45. I mean, that's incredible. And like the number of people that come through here.
Yeah.
And during season, I imagine you get, well, I guess all year, people from all over the world. And
yes.
I imagine you hear incredible stories, just that's, I think that's a neat thing about Naples is, so many people come here from all over the world.
Yes.
And, it is really kind of cosmopolitan, throughout parts of the year. And that kind of shifts where people are coming from. So it makes Naples a neat place.
It is very, very special, because people do come from everywhere, because it is so special. It is a very unique area that's got, that's a draw for people from all walks, all parts of the world. And you do hear and learn so much from the people who come from everywhere. They have a lot to contribute to us. But I love that part of Naples too. I think that's special, that, whether I can have a conversation just yesterday with someone who has been coming down from Chicago for so many years, or somebody who comes from France for so many years, or wherever they come from, and just to listen and learn about what's going on in the world, which is why I really enjoy this, because there's so much that I don't know about this paradise that we live in, and the curators and the visionaries that make it what it is. Because I think as we go into summer, especially, this is very appropriate that you and I are having this conversation, because I think there are parents and families looking to see, what do we do in the summer? Where do we go? What do we do? And I know that for anybody who hasn't, I know it's for children, for adults, for everyone, what a special trip that is to go out to the garden and take a look at it. How would you recommend, while we're talking about it, that people see the garden? What's a way to do it?
Oh, that's a great question. I think my favorite part of the garden is that I'm there every day during the week, but I walk through the garden every day, and every day it's different. Every day it changes. And I think sometimes it's subtle, and sometimes it's big changes. Like a tree will be in flower, big tree, and bright pink flowers that wasn't there the day before, wasn't blooming. And I think my best advice on experiencing the garden is just walk through slowly and look at everything. Come back, because it does change. It changes, kind of, it's alive. It's a thing that, I think that's one of the things that makes it so special, that, every time you walk through, it's a little bit different. And, I think people ask me, what's your favorite part of the garden? And it's different every single day. And it depends on kind of the experience that I had the day before. One of my favorite things to do is walk through the garden with my kids. And because I hear what they have to say. I hear those, I hear, Dad, I don't like that. Dad, that, or Dad, this is my favorite spot. So that changes. But I think, I don't know, the best way to experience it is, I think, with a friend or a family member, just walk through slowly and enjoy it. And I think it's about, being in the moment. We've done a lot to, you said the word curate earlier. We've done a lot to curate those moments. One of our big exhibits right now is a frame and flora, and it's actually just big frames around a view. And sometimes it's just a small group of pots, but sometimes it's a long view. And it's treated just like a museum. Several of them have a bench in front of them. There's a tag like you would see in the museum. It explains what you're looking at, and that's just that chance to stop and look and enjoy. I really love that. We've got a cool thing now called Nature Play, that it's in 3 different areas of the garden, and it's really connecting kids back to playing in nature. There's no directions. There's a lot of loose parts. Could be pine cones, leaves. There's kids do some weaving. There's lots of places to play and explore in nature, but it's having those experiences that we had as a kid. You played outdoors. You weren't in front of a screen. Watching kids do that, I mean, it's incredible. They reconnect with nature, and some of those kids are going to have my job someday. So, I really hope. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially in this, where parents are looking for a disconnect or pulling the plug on the iPad. Yeah. And what do I do with them then? What happens then? Yeah. Because before it was they would just kick us out of the house and say, go figure it out.
Yeah. Come back when the sun sets, right? Yeah.
But they're being an area where they can create, play without a rule or without having to say, do it between the lines. Just have at it here. Yeah. I think that's a beautiful thing. And
the imagination we see is just incredible. We had kids doing place settings, and during their flower show, that's part of the flower shows. They have these really elaborate, ornate place settings that the garden club designs, and kids were doing that. We've seen kids wrap presents. They use leaves to wrap little, pine cones or things. The imagination is just incredible, and you really see that come out in our nature play area.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you said something that I didn't even think about, which is come back again, because it's ever evolving. It's not static. It's not like looking at it once. It's not like going to a museum. You saw the painting and there it was. Yeah. But this is always changing. It's always going through its own season there.
Yeah.
Which I didn't think about that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I like that. And I didn't think about this either, but as I fight, I'm always fighting for some sort of inner peace, but that always requires meditation or some type of quiet time or just being able to be present, because it's really difficult to be present because we're always on the go and life's happening, and sometimes it takes a tragedy to get you present back in the moment, but that is a place to go where it forces you to be present. I mean, it's actually you're just in nature, and it's a way to just really center, which I hadn't thought of as a practice. Like it could be actually a practice for me, because I sometimes only get to that place where I know that I'm at peace or centered, or when I separate myself from everything and turn the phone off, which is so hard to do, but to actually be able to leave the phone in the car and go through the garden like that would be just an exercise in something that is good for my soul. Yeah. I love
absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
How you talked about your kids, and I know your kids are a big part of your life, and I could see that in learning about you. Yeah. How would your kids describe what it is that you do?
Oh, this is a great one, because my son, whenever anybody asks me what I do, I always look at my son and he kind of laughs, and he's like, he tells people that I'm a fancy gardener. I just that's his dad's a fancy gardener. I'm like, okay, because it is hard to explain, what you do. So dad's a fancy gardener. So sometimes I'll just say that I'm a fancy gardener, leave it at that, So, my daughter is one of those things, she's mostly just with me on weekends, and she knows that plants are important to me. She knows that that's something that's really, a core part of who I am. And we do a lot with plants. We plant flowers all the time. And I continually planting flowers and picking flowers with her. And she, I think she's grown up thinking that there's just flowers everywhere, just that's how it is, how life is. There's just plants and flowers everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You said before you came here, you dropped your son off at school. You took him to school. So that... I think that's cool, because that's time alone for you guys that he's forced to be with. He's a teenager. He's 15.
He's 14. He'll be 15 a couple months.
Okay,
so
so is that a part of your regular habit with him?
Yeah. I take him to school every day. But our big thing, for several years, has been fishing. And that kid, growing up in Florida, you're on the coast. You growing up outdoors. Kid just absolutely loves fishing, and we would be out, on weekends we'd be out 6, 7, 8 hours a day fishing, and just that's such a good thing for growing up in this area to have that connection. And I loved it, although I'd get a little bit bored after that. And he'd be
But not him.
No, not him. He'd be looking at the water fishing, and I'm looking at the plants on the beach. I'm turned around. He's like, "Where's Dad?" Dad's a half mile down the beach. With down on my knees looking at plants. So, yeah. But I think that's probably, plants are important, and I love my job, and I'm passionate about my job. But at the end of the day, I think now the reason I do my job, using plants to address problems in the community, it's because of my kids. I see so many changes in the environment and changes in our world around us, and I want to leave the world a better place for my kids, and that's a lofty goal. That's one of those things that just that's a really tough thing to do and actually be able to accomplish and say, I changed the world in a way that is much better for my kids. And I think that's what drives me, is leaving the world a better place for my kids, and seeing that you can actually do that, working with the environment, our work on the beach, our work in the community, planting trees, that moves the needle. And I think, I every day I think about that, and how will this impact my kids? But then the great part about that is how does it impact everybody in the community, everybody's kids?
Yeah. You tell me about the world of stormwater, because I know you have worked on that a lot.
Yeah. So stormwater is something that's we don't think about it as very sexy. You go to a mall or you go to some place, there's a stormwater system that's a part of that facility. But
what does that mean?
And we mostly don't know, because you don't see it. It's usually just like a turf grass bowl in the back somewhere, and you don't even necessarily know that that's part of the stormwater system. But that's not providing a lot of function. It's like, we've designed our stormwater in South Florida to prevent flooding, so it sweeps all that water out into the Gulf. And the idea is it goes away. It doesn't flood our community. But and we've dedicated a lot of space to that. And we have all the canals. We've got, most of our communities have multiple stormwater ponds, and they're usually turf grass right down to the edge. But those systems can be actually something that's beautiful, and they can function. They can actually be, I said stormwater's not sexy. Well, we can make them sexy. A lot of people move into a community because they've got a waterfront view around a lake. Well, if it's just turf down to the edge, that's not necessarily very attractive. So we can plant those areas with plants, and those plants can be attractive. They can bring in birds. So then you slow down, you start watching that, and you start seeing those interactions, wading birds, fishing there or catching insects. That's a slowing down and connection to nature. But by having those plants there, they're helping to clean the water. They can slow the flow of that water without causing flooding. We can design these things in ways that actually treat that water, and that's important, because we've had red tide. We've had these algal blooms off the coast, and that impacts everybody. I mean, that when the Gulf has, this red tide blooms, tourists don't want to come here.
Right.
And, that's our lifeblood. That's what keeps all of us in business, So that's a long connection, but, how we treat our landscape, how we treat those parts of our community that are important, that have function or can have more function, impacts every single person in the community. And it doesn't matter if you never go to the beach. If we have red tide, that impacts you. If you work in a hospital, in a church, in a school, your job relies on tourism in some way. There's a connection to that. So that's moving the needle. There's 10,000 stormwater ponds in Collier County, and most of those are
10,000.
grass. Yeah, and that's a study out of Florida Gulf Coast University.
Wow.
And most of those are turf grass right down to the edge. And
turf grass, meaning just floratam or whatever.
Yeah, floratam or just and that's not good for the environment. That's not helping to treat that water. In fact, that can add pollutants, because when we mow the grass clippings grass clippings are a pollutant. When we fertilize, that can get into the ponds. So changing that over to a more natural more native plantings. So, I come at this from the environmental side, but I make sure that when I talk about things like stormwater, that it's not just talking about the environment. The environment's important to me, but I know a lot of our community members, that's maybe not as important, but economics are important to everybody. That's a message that connects with everybody. And if we have less red tide in the Gulf, or we can decrease the number of days or the severity, that's economic. That's dollar values. We can tie to that.
Sure.
We can tie that back to people, because when there's red tide, you can't go to the beach. You go to the Gulf areas and you can feel it. You cough.
Oh yeah.
That
hurts.
Tourism. So it's all of this work around stormwater or hurricane recovery or beach dune restoration. It ties back to the environment, but it ties back to economics, and it ties back to people. It impacts everything.
How does the environment affect red tide? How are humans? What are we doing to cause it?
Yeah, so red tide is something that we don't know everything, but we do know that it may not be caused by pollutants like fertilizers and nutrients, but we do know with certainty that fertilizers and nutrients feed red tide and make those blooms larger.
Okay.
They can make them last longer. They can take a small bloom and make it, a very large bloom, and then we get fish die-offs and we get fish kills. And, you don't want to go to the beach when there's, that's not a reputation we want to have in Naples. So we do know that that's something we need to do, is reduce our reliance on fertilizer. And we can do that through plants. We can do that by changing the way we connect with our environment.
What would a retention pond, I don't know what they're called in communities, because I have two of them in my community, and the houses are more expensive that are on that pond, on that thing. What would it look like where it was more friendly or actually better than just the grass going right to the edge? What's the difference?
So we plant native plants, and we focus on native plants because they're not going to become invasive. They're not going to become a problem, but we plant them, it's called littorals, and it's the, plants that are growing in the water side, their roots or down into the water. Plant native plants there, and we've got like workhorse species that do a lot of the function, but then, we add a lot of beautiful plants to that, and like irises are native, or water lilies, and then we plant plants, a buffer planting on the upland side. And again, we plant it for that natural function, and that can be a lot of grasses. There's some wildflowers we can put in there. There's some trees. There's some flowering. We have a native magnolia that's got a beautiful 6-inch white flower to it. And when we do this, you had Paul Arsenal on recently, and you're talking about Paul's paintings, and that Paul truly captures the sense of place in Florida. And when we do these kind of plantings, we want to capture a sense of place. It can be artistic. So in the garden, when we designed our stormwater system, when you pull into the garden, you don't realize that there's a little bit of a pond in the front that's disconnected, and it's got some other plants to it. But around the circle drive, that is part of our stormwater system. And we sat down with artists' work like Paul Arsenal, Clyde Butcher's
cool.
photography. So when we designed that, it wasn't just designed with landscape architecture. And we worked with a great landscape architect, Ellen Getz, in the design of those. So it was that landscape architecture and nature and art, and we brought together form and function, and when we sat down to do that, and brought all that together. And we made stormwater sexy. We made it. We put it something that it's right out front. When you go to the garden, one of my favorite things is people go for concerts, and we have the water garden stage, and it's on the water garden. When you look down that, it's our river of grass. That's part of our stormwater system. Like we have concerts in the stormwater system. That's cool. We've made it something that it's a feature. It can be something that, for all those people that pay more for that house on the water, we can make it more attractive. So, yeah.
There are even trees on our property. I wasn't aware of this, that there is like a county law or an ordinance that required the builder to put a certain tree on each property that I talked about trimming it back, and the landscape company said, no, that's a tree that has to stay. That's a whatever the ordinance is for that tree. That's a native tree, it would be, or that would be something. Cause I have no idea what it was, but I just remember them saying, no, they have to plant that at every property. They have to. There's certain ones that they have to do for that.
Yeah.
And our property backs up to what's called a preserve, which I guess can never be touched in any way, and we can't do anything on that side of it. And we have this. Of course, they built all the homes up on this mound we're elevated over that, and then they had originally put in sea oats along the back of that. And what a lot of people have done instead of the sea oats is spend a lot more money to put these like rocks in over top of that, and they've landscaped them pretty and put rocks in. But the sea oats were there originally, and I'm not going to spend $30,000 to put the rocks in for something like that. But some of the first landscaping company, kind of let them all die. There's like one or two left, but I was thinking maybe I should put those back there to keep from the erosion or whatever happens back there. Is that something that I'm kind of asking for advice? Without seeing it.
No, in my own community, this was something. Our lake bank was basically eroding, and people were losing their lawns, and the solution to that was not, hundreds of thousands of dollars of rocks. It was plants. So that's what they're doing. They made the right decision. So, plants are more, I guess, they're forgiving. They grow, and that kind of, grow and evolve over time. So I would definitely do plants. That's cheaper, much cheaper. And I think it's a better solution.
Okay, good. You have confidence with that. Because I was not about to have these guys put a bunch of rocks back there.
Yeah.
And I actually love the way it looked when the natural oats or whatever it was that they had back there. It was a pretty look. And, looking into the preserve, we get the bobcats that come along back there. There's nothing better than seeing that. I love seeing that bobcat just stroll along the back.
That's beautiful.
It is.
That's beautiful. We in the garden, we get panthers, we get bobcats, we get
panthers too.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And that like if your house backs up to a preserve like that, those things that you see, that's part of living here, and it's a part of Florida. But it's cool that you get to experience that.
Yeah. We hear coyotes sometimes back in there, and just we'll see the snakes, and my wife doesn't like that, but I love seeing them. That's part of where we came to their home. We're living in their house.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
Is there someone who is your inspiration or a mentor for you, or who you've kind of changed the course of your life, or you continue to look up to, or has made you who you are?
Wow. Yeah, I think going through college, I think I aligned myself and connected with the professors that were less teachers and more taught me to ask the right questions. They're like Socratically. They and I think I had some great advisors in my undergraduate program and my graduate program that I think really changed the way I looked at the world, because they taught me to maybe more ask the right questions than to learn that way. I think a couple of my college and undergraduate and graduate, and then I think I have to say my parents. I look back, I see how hard it is now being a parent. It is one of the hardest jobs I could imagine. Anybody that has children, and you're just like, being there for them, and you've got to be there for somebody else, 100% of the time. And I look back and realize how busy I am now, and I look back and my parents almost every weekend took us camping, canoeing, all of those kinds of things. And I think, I can't thank my parents enough for what they did when I was a kid. I look now and I'm like, gosh, I don't know how they could have done all that they did to take us on all these adventures.
Yeah. with fewer resources on top of that too, right?
fewer resources, and they didn't have iPhone. They couldn't set up campgrounds and hotels like from their phone. They didn't have that.
They're looking at Woodall's directory.
It's all paper. Phone calls and So
they're back home. They're
they're in Indiana. Yeah, they've got a farm there.
How would Mom describe you?
Oh, I think my parents always had concern. I think they always I started out as pre-med, and then day I graduated from college, I decided to move to Belize literally that day for a couple weeks, which ended up being about 2.5 years. I think they always had this worry a little bit, but I think she would say free-spirited or curious. I think she always had this worry that what's he going to go on and do? How are you going to get a job? You're living in the middle of rainforest in Belize. It's not a real job, Chad. There's not a. And again, that goes back to my kids saying, "Dad's a fancy gardener." That's not a real job, But I think it's that finding a real job in that. So yeah.
What would you say to somebody who has a young student, young person who has an interest in what your world is?
I think, I work with a lot of students from FGCU, and I think to me it's inspiring to work with them because they're asking so many questions. They're curious. And I think it's that I would tell them to look up and look at the big picture. Quite often we get focused on one thing, especially as a scientist, you get into your research and you get really focused on one thing. But looking up and looking at the big picture, I think that allows us to ask more questions. How is what I'm doing relevant to the world? How does it impact the world? How does, you get focused on that one thing. But, one of the things that we say on our team is look up. At our conservation team at the garden, look up, because you get really focused on this one thing, and it's look at all this going on around me, and this is how what I'm working on connects with all of that. So, and I think on the other side of that is working with students keeps me on my toes. It's a two-way street.
Sure. So, yeah. Well, what do you do when life gets hard, or when you are facing tough challenges, or in any area of life? What's your outlet, or what's your go-to, and how do you handle things like that?
It's funny because, I work in a garden every day, all day. And, that's my life, but that's what I do is go home and garden. And it's just that hands in the dirt. I guess I do science all day, but I think when I go home, it's my chance to do gardening as art. I get to, my daughter and I do cut flowers all the time, and we bring them in, and it's, designing that, and that sense of, I can bring some art to it. Every day, the thing that I do, we all come home from work, and, just you're wound up a little bit, and you're just, you've had a busy day, and so not always the best day, and and you come home and it's hard to slow down. Again, going back to you got to be there for your kids, and be present. And first thing I do is walk out into the garden, and I'll just walk around the garden, even if it's 5 minutes. But that's that. Okay, slow down. That's that time to just kind of reconnect and come in, breathe, and then I can come back in and be there, be present for my son. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
If you could only work with one species for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Ooh, man. Wow. So my answer today would probably be palms. I love palm trees, and I would say the Florida thatch palm is one of my favorites. If we talk about palms, we talk about plants sometimes, what they're, if it had a personality, it would be a tuxedo. I mean, it's a native plant, but they're very formal looking, and I love using them around town and putting them into plantings because they look very formal, but they look like Florida. They, so they're that, very attractive, but it's a sense of place. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
How many different palms are there?
Oh gosh, there's thousands. And,
Thousands,
I
really?
feel like
Wow.
and just when I just when I think I know most of them around town, I'll see a new one, and
Really?
that's kind of what's exciting.
Wow,
So, yeah,
that's incredible.
yeah, yeah.
There's not just this small finite number. I had no idea there would be that many.
Yeah,
of them.
yeah. There's lots, and there's always something new to learn. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun.
What do you miss about back home?
I that sense of place is so much of that connection to nature, and sense of place is like the core of who I am. And leaving Indiana was tough because
You were on a farm.
I was on a farm, and I went to grad school in Bloomington, Indiana, and I had a connection to just the Midwest, and I loved the prairies. I loved the forest, the elevation change. Like it wasn't like mountains, but I think I missed the spring ephemerals, the spring wildflowers, the smells. I could walk outside with my eyes closed. You could drop me off with my eyes blindfolded, and I could tell you, okay, it's spring or it's fall, just by the smells, just like that connection to that. So leaving that was really hard, and I think always summers are our slow time, and I get that chance to go back, and immediately I want to be outside. I want to be, those smells and that. I miss that. I miss seasons. I miss a lot of that. So, that the summer's my time to go back and reconnect with that. So.
And when it's a little quieter around here, you get to do a little bit more in this area. Is there a restaurant? Is there a food that you like in our...
Oh, gosh.
Naples?
That's one of the best part of Naples is food.
I know,
I love,
right?
I love it. I shouldn't give away too many of my favorite places, but,
Right.
I like to explore, but, I think right now, I tried bicyclette recently.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
What a gem. We're
Yes.
so lucky to have bicyclette. It was my first time there, and it was just like, okay, this is instant favorite.
Yeah.
And then I like cocktails at the Cave. Is a great place to go. It's the wine bar up on Airport Road, and they do great artistic things with cocktails. Great place. So I would say right now those are my two favorites.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite? What's yours?
Well, you mentioned
I'm fishing
bicyclette.
for now. Like my new favorite.
I haven't, but recently I went there for lunch, and I just stopped. I didn't understand. It's been there for a while, and I just didn't understand it. I saw some articles written about it, and I didn't know if it was part of the bike thing or because there's a bike store there.
Yeah.
But then I heard people talking about it, and I went, and what I really loved was that so much of the menu has got things that are on the outer edges of food. Like different stuff, not the mainstream normal stuff. And I love that, that's why I like to go to other cities and experiencing other ethnic, restaurants and things like that have a little bit of, more flavor, more spice, more diversity in it. And that menu just blew me away, seeing what was on there, and everything we tried was just, wow, over the top. Yeah, it was special. That was a good one.
When you've got to go to Google, when you're looking at the menu, like, what is that ingredient?
Then
exactly. You're like, okay, I'm going to have a good experience. Yeah.
That was exactly it. I saw some of the things on there. Wasn't sure what it was, but hey, we're going to try it anyway. We ended up ordering some extra stuff, my son and I, and really, that was one that stood out for me, for sure.
Yeah.
And then we went to... Bay, not Bayside. Bayside is at the village, the Bay House.
Oh yeah,
which is in a beautiful. Oh gosh, the dining room is beautiful. I mean, it's on the estuary there, the waterway in the back there, and it's by that new Perry Hotel.
Yeah.
Okay, and I hadn't been there in a
while.
while. And great seafood, phenomenal. So we were there last Friday night, which I thought, or it was Saturday night. I thought after Easter it wasn't going to be. They were packed. It was mobbed. Really, still so busy, but. Loved it. Great seafood. I had the like a seafood stew. They called it this. I think it was a St. Augustine stew. It had mussels and clams and fish and shrimp, and it was was awesome. Really, really good. My wife had black grouper, which was amazing. I love black grouper. And so that's a new one. I love seafood. So so if your son ever catches a lot, I'll be happy to buy anything.
Okay. All right. He does.
Is he backwater fish or what's
mostly just coastal, our favorite is mullet just because you catch them in a cast net and then we smoke them and they're so good. It's a Florida.
Yeah. No, I remember they have cast
Florida.
net. Yeah. I love smoked mullet. I love it. I don't see it anywhere. I haven't been able to get it, but I remember having it a lot growing up around here. It was, and that watching the schools. So awesome seeing just so many packed together like
it's
that.
Unreal when they come in. Yeah. I think that's one of those, those you got to go to a real Florida cracker restaurant to get that. And there aren't as many of those around. I'll have to try Bayfront. I stopped by Perry just to look at beautiful rooftop bar.
Oh, it is. Yes.
Great.
The view over the bay is gorgeous. Yeah, it's
I just went up to see, I'd seen the view and they were packed. Again, it was probably the same Friday night that you were.
Yeah.
I went up, I live up there. And I thought, I'd just drive over and see what it looked like. I'd like to explore. And, I just wanted to see what it looked like. You mentioned going to try different types of food. I think a food mecca globally, someplace I haven't been, but I want to, is Oaxaca in Mexico. I hear so much about food in Oaxaca and their connection to all these different, there's famous dishes, but every family has a different recipe for it, like mole. It can take hours to make, and every family has their secret recipe. Well, I talk to friends who are from Oaxaca and where do I go in Naples? And I don't know if I should give this away because it's truly a gem, but and it doesn't look like a restaurant from the front. La Oaxaqueña on Davis, there's a little bodega in the front, and you go in and am I in the right place?
Yeah.
What? You walk through the little bodega and it opens up to this restaurant, and it just and it's true Mexican food and from Oaxaca. And I was there over the holidays, and I can't think of what the drink was. There was some drink that they only make for 12 days. And the night that I was there, I was so excited to try this drink. And I tried to order it, and they're Grandma is the only one that's allowed to make it. And Grandma was sick that night. So Grandma wasn't feeling well, so Grandma didn't make it. And it's just this wow, that's a real special thing.
Yeah.
I got to go back and get this. I got to try this.
Love those places.
Yeah.
Love places like that are just kind of off the beaten path and just different and something you wouldn't expect, like a surprise place to go. I love that. Right on Davis, so not far from here too. So I'm going to check it out because there are, and I'm learning that too, that there's so many variations of Mexican food. There's not just the generic. There's so many specialties. I'm a sauce guy. I love different flavors and spices. We're going to my wife and I, to celebrate her birthday. We're going to back to St. Bart's next week actually, and what's neat about for me is staying in one of the VRBOs or villas that they have there, is a lot of times they'll leave, the other people who have stayed there will leave their spices in the cabinetry, and it's things that maybe I haven't ever cooked with before, but I love to buy the fresh fish down there and then use whatever's in the cabinetry. There were spices that I had never used the last time we went, and it was fun because of the French culture and the French way there. It's very French, but the influences of the seasonings that they use, and I love to cook, and so that's exciting for me to get to go and eat fish and just create from whatever's in the cabinet.
My stomach is grumbling here. I'm just I think I started during COVID was when I really started cooking, and I just I fell in love with it, and so I do a lot lot HelloFresh.
Because I learned a lot from HelloFresh. Yes,
learned a lot, and I don't have time to meal plan, but that was one of the things that I kind of committed to, with my son, was I'm gonna make our food. I'm not gonna buy frozen things. And he learned to cook, and in fact, I can't think of the brand, but I think over Christmas when he was 13, he asked for a set of knives. He got really into cooking, and now it's great because as a 14-year-old, I can turn over whatever to him, whether it's fish, he'll clean it and cook it, or steak or vegetables. Wow. And he's learned to do that, and I think that's one of those things that I think everybody should learn. That not necessarily to be a chef, but if you can feed yourself, you can you've got it made.
It's a lost art.
But,
yeah,
but then
special.
you can connect with
Yes.
people and just What's your favorite? Do you have like a favorite thing that you cook?
I really don't. I don't. Growing up in an Italian family, I don't even cook a lot of the Italian foods that my mother and my family cooked. I'm not a big pasta eater. I was in the day, but not. I just. I'm kind of all over the place with what I like to do.
Yeah.
It just depends on sometimes what's on sale in the grocery store, and I want to create something, or what I have that's left. I'd like to create. Just from nothing. Sometimes I'm not even sure what it's going to end up being. And my wife will say, "What are you making?" I'm not really sure, but here's what we have, and it will end up. I'll
let you know when it's done. Yeah.
So that's
cool.
fun for me. That's my creative outlet. But I enjoy when I have the time. But it's also therapeutic, kind of like what you do for your therapy. It's kind of something that I like to do. That I kind of get lost in it. I'm not. I like that your son has a set of knives. It makes me think of my knives. I got to get them sharpened because there's nothing like a fresh set of knives that are real sharp.
Hankels.
Oh yes,
Hankels.
yes. Oh,
you got a set of Hankels. You're like, he wanted
real deal.
Real deal.
Those are
yes,
great.
we did knife safety and learning all that. So
that's awesome.
It's great because I can turn. I reel back a little bit. It's great because I can just get fun things for him to try and explore. And we like to go to, there's a plaza in Tampa that has an international grocery. And there's one in Cincinnati that it's kind of a mecca for us. And every year we go, every summer, my son and I go there and we set a budget and we're going to buy, this is how much we're going to spend. But, we bought aged soy sauce and this just incredible, all these different spices and all of these different things. The downside to that is that I now have a 14-year-old who's got a palate that just.
That's awesome.
I just we went out last night. We got ramen on the way home, and I'm getting like a $15 ramen, and he's like, he got the salmon, and he got this. I'm just like, I've created a monster.
Great.
Just
It's got good taste.
He's got good taste, but just someday he's gonna have to have to feed himself.
He can fish and he can clean his own fish. Which that's a big.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Cleaning fish is something I still never. My son could do it.
Yeah.
He's a real fisherman like my father was, which I'm not. But that's a talent and something that's special. Being able to clean.
Good skill. Yeah.
What's the music that's playing for you when you're either at home or chilling out or lifting your spirit or in your car?
I grew up listening to my parents' records, and during that time, they had the Beatles, they had CCR. I can still hear their records that I played growing up, and they only had 20 or 30 records, but that was the soundtrack to my life, and that's continued throughout. And I think then in college, I discovered the Grateful Dead, and I don't look like a guy that would, but would be a big Deadhead, but I have exactly one bumper sticker on my truck, and it's a little Grateful Dead Steely. Right? I followed the Grateful Dead. It was after Jerry had passed away, but I love that kind of music. I like a lot of singer-songwriter, guitar. I in the same way with cooking and food, I think I like a little bit of everything. Tyler Childers is a big one right now. Singer-songwriter, kind of Americana kind of music. And I think the Grateful Dead for me is Americana. I see it as that,
What is it about the Grateful Dead? What is it about that music? Because it's not like, they have this one song. They have this whole, just their way. What is it about the Grateful Dead that has the following that they have?
I think it's because it's different every time you listen to it. To a lot of people, it may sound exactly the same, but I think it's different every time they play. It's a little bit different, and I think before I went to grad school, my best friend and I jumped in a car and we drove from Indiana to California and then up to Oregon, and we did two things. One, we bought a national park pass, and I think we did 15 national parks.
Wow, awesome.
And then we followed the Grateful Dead. And I think part of it is that it's different every time, but part of that is like just that connection to that memory in time that, I had 3 months with nothing to do, but just enjoy life.
Yeah.
I picked up the book Travels with Charlie. It's Steinbeck, and read that on the trip. He was older and retiring, and he and his dog drove across the U.S. And I think that so many songs by the Grateful Dead are about places in the U.S. And I think that traveling, we talked about Central America and the Caribbean and how much that's been a part of my life. But growing up, seeing your own country, I think that sense of exploration is there in the Grateful Dead's music. It's there in our food culture that both of us enjoy, travel, all of that. I think that's again part of just going back to my mom worrying about me, that sense of adventure. Yeah.
How about, you mentioned a book, but how about any other books in your arsenal or anything recently you read that's like something that's...
Most of what I've read recently is scientific papers. That's in my career. That's where I'm at. But I think my favorite couple authors are Kurt Vonnegut. He lived in Indiana, and I think there's a connection there. But he's just got a witty sense of humor, just a really kind of dry, witty sense of humor. And then I would say Hermann Hesse. It was a German writer, and in college I really got into his work, and I would buy different translations just to see how they compared. And it's been fun because my son has realized, reading some of his classic books, he'll hear references to them on the radio or in conversation and things. So I've got him reading some of those. I've got to get him to read Vonnegut. I've got to, that's one thing I just keep saying. I keep putting the books in front of him, but I think he's like, Dad, he's exploring. You don't want to do what your parents tell you to do.
Not.
So all of those books are sitting
Someday
there.
It'll click. He'll go, he was right.
Dad was right. Yeah. So, but that's one of those things that, on my retirement list is get back into those, Vonnegut and Hesse and all this. Yeah.
Any podcasts in your rotation? Anything you listen to?
I like a lot of Science Fridays. This American Life. I think it's all those storytelling podcasts. There's one called 99% Invisible, and I think I like it because it's about design, and good design is 99% invisible. Like you kind of have to stop. Oh, that's a really I think one of the ways to describe it is around chairs. I know this is going to sound silly, but a really well-designed chair is designed to disappear in a room full of people because people are sitting in them and they're just kind of they're being used. But you look at it like a Herman Miller or you just furniture can be art, and you don't realize that until you're looking at it and it's just this piece of art with no one sitting in it. But then they're designed to just kind of become invisible as we use them. And that's a really cool podcast because it connects to nature. It connects to everyday
What's the
things.
Name of it again?
99% Invisible by Roman Mars is the podcaster. Great podcast. And he's a storyteller, and he tells, talk about all the things that are around us in our everyday that we don't really realize how much they're designed for us as people. They're kind of art. So yeah.
I learn from this too, so it gives me other ones to listen to because I'm all over the place. Whatever the next recommended one is, I'm always looking for.
Do you have a favorite that
I'm kind of all over. When I want to really disappear, it's weird. I'm obsessed with like these crime ones sometimes.
Yeah.
Really odd saying, but I just like to deep dive on some of these cases that I think, how could somebody have thought this way and thought they could actually get away with that? Hear what's behind it. But I've got to keep my mind fed with positivity and good thoughts and things because my mind just naturally wants to drift towards the worst, awfulized things. So I'm always listening to either. In fact, I'm listening to one of the audiobooks I'm listening to right now is by Tiffany McQuaid, who has the real estate agency right next door.
Okay.
And she's a super energetic, positive, just got a great spirit about her. And her book is awesome. And, last couple of days, I'm sad to say that I'm almost at the end of it, which I don't like because she's got a lot of great stories in it, a lot of positivity, a lot of uplifting stuff. So it really helps feed my soul, and books like that I
I'll have to check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something that I thought might be only the real estate world, but she really personalizes it and adds her dimension to what she sees from life about it's so much more than just the business that she's in. And I really love that. That's been one that's been
cool.
Good for my soul. If there was something that, is there something that people should know about you but don't?
Wow, that's a really complex question. I'm a really quiet person, and I have, we talked about my connections in the Caribbean and that being to connect with people, and I for my job I'm always on stage or on the news or doing talking about sharing about the environment and talking about it, but at the end of the day, I like to be home and quiet and with my kids, and it's a challenge to be an introvert and make yourself an extrovert during the day and doing that. But I really value that at home and those experiences and that time. Just my quiet solitude.
Yeah.
Get
it.
Yeah.
We have a new segment that I'm going to try out on you here.
All right.
Sort of in the fun segment of things.
Let's get
deep. Let's get deep.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
So you get to pick a card from this deck there.
All right.
Let's see. You can pick any one out of there. Help yourself. You can answer whatever it asks. No pressure, but we love a good, honest moment.
So, great question and maybe a weird answer. I'm terrible with names. I'm horrible with names. I forget. There's people I work with every day, and I'm like, I can't. I just struggle. But I can remember every plant name. So I had to think on this one. So
my wife is a lot like that too. She doesn't know any of our neighbors. She knows their dog's name.
Oh yeah. That's so funny. I can name their plants, the plants that are on their desk. But yeah. Totally. So what celebrity crushes did you have growing up? Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. Maybe maybe a weird answer. Janine Garofalo, maybe. She's a comedian.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Maybe her, Sarah Silverman. I don't know. I don't.
Sarah.
Yeah. I think it's maybe just that maybe it's the sense of humor. So that's a funny one. That's that's one I have to think about too. Yeah.
Haven't heard Sarah's name in a while, or Janine's name in a while. But I like them both.
Yeah. Cool. Maybe not traditional, not like your movie star.
Right.
Like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But somebody that, because I would think of somebody not as mainstream for myself too. That wouldn't be the one. I don't know who it is today, but back in the day, whether it was Christy McNichol or Raquel Welch. I don't know. Or for my dad, it was probably Sophia Loren or whatever. This has been awesome. I really can't thank you enough. I had no idea what this was going to be like going into it.
Same. So this is a great experience. I loved it. From the moment I got here, I've had a great experience. So
you bring a good energy with you. Everybody felt that coming in, and when I hear Maria doing her thing with you, I knew it was a special moment that got created out there. And I really appreciate you.
That was wonderful. And I'm excited to talk to Maria again after this. I feel like I've known her for years.
Yeah. She's an old soul like that for sure.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. This has been
100%. You've given us more than just facts, and that's what I love about it. You've given us a lens, and given me personally a lens to see nature differently in a special way. You remind us that conservation isn't about control. It's about connection. It's about restoring, listening, and respecting what's been here long before us.
Yeah.
Thank you for the work you do, for the legacy you're building at Naples Botanical Garden, and for showing us why plants really do matter. So everyone out there listening, if you needed a sign to plant something, to learn something, or to protect something, this is it. Thanks, Chad.
Awesome. Thank you.
Really had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Me too. I appreciate
Thanks
it.
a lot.
Yeah.
All right, if this episode made you smile or think or just go, that was kind of awesome, do us a favor, subscribe, like, or drop a comment. It's like applause for us. It helps us keep the good vibes going. We appreciate you. Thanks so much.